My name is Stuart. My store is So Many Things in Mount Dora, Florida. This is part 1, showing how to use a panel in Mountain Peak Creations pattern Arcadia. We have chosen a panel, Merry, Berry, and Bright, The Night Before Christmas by RJR Fabrics. The accent squares are Glitz from Maywood Studios. The border around each block is Toscana by Northcott. The sashing and inner border is Folio by Henry Glass. And the outer border and binding is Stonehenge by Northcott. The reason we made this video is in the directions from Mountain Peak Creations. You have to turn the blocks when creating the quilt. But if you're using a panel, which is directional, you cannot turn the blocks. We chose this particular panel because of the Santa Claus flying over the moon. I started by drawing out my quilt on a piece of graph paper. I used 4 squares to the inch to make it easier to get my measurements. This was to make sure I liked how my color squares were going to lay out and work with the pattern. Then I wrote out my combinations that are listed in the directions. We have a 4-color combination and a 3-color combination. In between and on one side is a strip of the sashing fabric. So the 4-color combination was green, gold, red, and blue with a sashing strip in between to create a 7-strip combination. The 3-color combination was blue, green, and red. And notice on this one there is a strip on one side of it. So this is a 6-strip combination. Now I'm going to mark the colors on the graph paper in the order in which they are on the color combination. Blue, red, gold, and green. And now the 3-color combination: blue, green, and red. Okay, now notice I have filled in all of the blocks with colors, and I like how it turned out, so I'm going to keep it this way. Okay, this is a page from the pattern, and because you cannot turn the blocks, we're going to number each one. Start in the upper left-hand corner is going to be block number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to take these same numbers and go to this other paper and put the same numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Note that block 1 and block 3 and block 9 and block 11 are all the same block. That applies to block 2, block 4, block 10, and block 12. Those 4 blocks are all the same also. And then we have block 5 and block 7, which are the same, and block 6 and block 8, which are the same. So I'm going to be showing you how to create one in each of these categories. And as you see, we've laid out our Merry, Berry, and Bright panel, and we're focusing on the Santa Claus in the upper right hand corner because we don't really want to cut him up. Reindeer up. So that's where we're going to start. Our panels are somewhat less than 24 inches. The Arcadia pattern calls for squares that are 8.5 by 8.5. And the quilt that we're doing is 3 squares wide. That adds up to more than 24 inches. In order to compensate for that, we're going to add an inner border around each block so that we're going to cut 7.5 by 7.5 inch blocks, and then we're going to add a border so that they become 8.5 by 8.5 inch blocks. Okay, so back to the cutting. We've laid this out on our cutting board, and right up here is where I'm trying not to cut off Santa's reindeer's noses. So because you've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to give him a 1/4 inch before his nose, I'm 1/2 inch away from his nose. Cut a nice straight line. So we're going to have to cut 7.5 inch strips down the length of the fabric. We're going to take our second ruler that is 7.5 inches and place it on our cut, and then put our cutting ruler up against it. Okay, to check to make sure that we're 7.5 inches, we're going to go down here and make sure that we are 7.5 inches away from our cut. And then we're going to do that again. And then we're going to cut our first cut. So this is our first 7.5 inch strip. Okay, and then we're going to do that a second time. I'm using a Creative Grids ruler for the 7.5 inch, and I'm using a True Cut ruler to do the actual cutting. Okay, and now for our final cut. And because we're using the 2 ruler system, if the panel should move a little bit, it really doesn't affect the straightness of the cut because you're butting the one ruler against the other to get your measurement. So now I have 3 7.5 inch pieces. Now we're going to make sure that Santa is in the square or somewhere close to the center. So we're approximately about right there. Okay, so notice that he is about right there. Okay, I'm going to place my cutting ruler down. This also is going to cut the There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 7.5 inch square down so that it's perfectly placed with the other 3 sides. Take my cutter and cut off the 4th side. And there we go. That is square number 9. Okay, and now we're just going to go down the line and cut the other 4 squares, one at a time, measuring up our ruler. And there you go. And this is number 10, this would be 11, and 12. Notice I've got some left over on the bottom, and you can make the quilt bigger if you want by using that bottom square. I chose not to do that in our project. Make sure you number your blocks as you are cutting them out of the panel. So we started with the Santa Claus and the reindeer, and that was block number 9. So here's block number 9. The one beneath it, the second one I cut, was block number 10. So we marked that block number 10, and then we marked all of the others. Okay, I cut my inner border strips, or my strips around the block, to 1.25 inches, and then I am going to cut the whole block down to 8.5 when I am done sewing. So I pin it on, and sew my strip down. Okay, because my strips were 1.25 inches, I'm able to now square up my block to 8.5. And the Creative Grids rulers are great for squaring up. And they come in all different sizes, from around 2.5 inches up to something like 20.5 inches. And wouldn't it be great if I had a mat that turned? Okay, so now we're squared up to 8.5 by 8.5. Now that we're trimmed to 8.5 by 8.5, it's really important that you take your number and you put it back on the block, so that you don't lose the placement. So that was block number 9. Okay, I've made my 4-color combination and my 3-color combination using the sashing strips in between, and on the 3-color combination, the 1 sashing strip on the bottom. Okay, the sashing strips have been cut apart, and we're going to show you the 4 different combinations that you're going to need to make. Using block number 9, which is blocks 1, 3, 9, and 11, you take your block with the border around it, you add a sashing strip to the side, left side, and a sashing strip to the bottom. And then you add a 3-color combination with your folio strip on the bottom to the left side, and your 4-color combination with your blue to the left. Okay, and here is block number 9 all finished.